Hello again, I am Blunty. So, let's have a chat about Fallout 76. Fair warning right now, I'm gonna start out pretty negative and then address the positive, so please just watch the entire video before you comment. If you don't have the attention span to do that, maybe just don't bother commenting at all, because I'm sick of that crap. People commenting without watching the whole video, commenting without getting all the information, And anyway, with a nano attention span like that, games like Fallout really aren't for you anyway. The small amount of venting aside, let's start by quickly framing up my personal point of view. The first Fallout game I ever really sank my teeth into in any real way, and in fact the only Fallout game I have completed, was Fallout 4. I know a lot of people consider Fallout 3 and New Vegas to be the better games, but when they were new, it was a time when I wasn't really interested in that kind of RPG game, so it never made it onto my radar in any significant way. But Fallout 4 hit me just at the right time. I was ready and eager for a big fat deep RPG experience, and I very much enjoyed it. And have been patiently waiting for Bethesda's next entry into the series ever since, not counting the crappy shovelware microtransaction parasite mobile game Fallout Shelter that they've since ported to other systems. And then the pre-E3 rumours started rumbling about the next Fallout game being kind of like a Rust online-only survival game. But as I do with most pre-announcement rumours, I took note of it, but I didn't invest any real time at all thinking about it. I prefer using my brain space and my precious time to consider things after some official information is actually presented. But as we all know by now, at E3 the radiation-proof container was opened, Fallout 76 spilled out, as an online-only survival RPG game. The community reaction was, as it depressingly always is these days, it feels like, a screeching, knee-jerk, aggressive, divisive and argumentative mess. Some people were curious, some people were eager, other people were just screeching at the top of their lungs about how they don't like change. Even though if nobody ever tried anything new in video games, we wouldn't have the Fallout series at all. So post-announcement, we learnt a bit more, and it turns out Fallout 76 grew out of what was originally planned and prototyped as a multiplayer add-on for Fallout 4. As the Bethesda peeps worked on the idea, it expanded so much they started crafting it out as its own separate entity. In fact, they apparently had to rewrite much of the game engine Fallout 4 ran on in order to weave in the hopefully robust netcode and such. We're told the map is 4 times the size of Fallout 4's, but as we all know by now from other open-world sandbox games, a big map does not automatically mean there's lots to do in it. Very often, in the last few years, many games have had big maps, and the developers have bragged about how big the maps are. But the maps turned out to be empty maps, with little but collectathons to fill them out and force you around their large world. Fallout 76, like a proper Fallout game, will have quests and supposedly a complete story arc, and it will also feature base building similar to, but hopefully much improved over, what Fallout 4 had, which I wanted to like, but found so catastrophically clumsy and frustrating and awkward to use I gave up on using it anything past the bare minimums required for various quest lines. But on the surface it seems good so far. It has much of what a Fallout game should have, right? But with confirmation that it's online only, the worries came. Fallout, till now, was a deep, complex, flexible, single-player experience offering a ton of options, and even now Fallout 4 players are still replaying and replaying and replaying and replaying each time, trying new paths, new choices, new character builds, new specializations, new strategies. Replayability is huge in Fallout 4. An online-only survival game could severely limit that. See, online games tend to have fairly strong metas, especially PvP online games. There's always one or two builds out there that most players start falling into because it's quote-unquote the best, and you generally have to follow suit just to make sure you can survive or keep pace with the other players. In my opinion, this can reduce the feeling of freedom to just F about and experiment. And with no NPCs in the game at all, when every human you meet is another live player somewhere in the world, that also hamstrings the way story gets told. One of my favourite parts of Fallout 4 was meeting the various quest characters. So many different personalities and stories, some wacky, some heartbreaking, and every shade in between. It was thoroughly enjoyable. An online-only game strips all of that away. An online multiplayer-only game also strips away and retards another core mechanic of Fallout, the VATS system. And being unable to pause gameplay by jumping into your Pip-Boy menus for inventory management, weapon switching, healing, buffing, preparing and crafting. Online-only PvP means 100% real-time, and frankly that breaks a lot of what Fallout does mechanically in gameplay and the way most of us play Fallout. So they're either going to have to make shit a lot more dumbed down and simple and retarded to compensate for it, or they need to drastically change some core mechanics. Either way, it becomes less and less and less like a Fallout game we know and love. In an attempt to appease and calm panicked people who love these games for that deep, complex single-player experience, we're told by Bethesda bigwig Todd Howard that you can absolutely play quote-unquote solo in Fallout 76. But that is some sleazy-ass wordplay. It's cheating. He wants us to believe, for as long as possible, by using solo in that sentence, that it means single-player game as possible, and we should stop screaming negatively and angrily and in disappointment about their new game in forums and social media and whatnot, making it look like to outsiders and the media like everyone is upset about this new game. But what it actually means when he says you can play quote-unquote solo is actually just that you can choose not to team up with other players. The game is still 100% online only, and the game is still 100% multiplayer only. Solo does not mean single player in any way. Just because you can solo raid in games like World of Warcraft, it doesn't magically make that game a single player game, does it? And Todd Howard's weasel words don't change the fact that Fallout 76 has been stripped back of a lot of stuff a true solo game would have, regardless of if you can largely avoid direct interaction with other player characters or not. And his promises that they're working hard to build ways to disincentivize and punish and prevent trolls and arseholes and griefers, people whose main purpose in playing at any given moment in an online PvP game is to make someone else's gameplay experience crappier, are worth absolutely nothing. They're just words. I can't name a single online game that includes PvP as a core mechanic that has managed to free itself from griefers. Not to mention the inevitable hackers and cheaters degrading and ruining the gameplay experience for any legitimate player unfortunate enough to be randomly tossed into the same random server as them, because you can't choose your server. And it's not just the ones who use aimbots or no-clip and crap like that, but also the people who cheat in huge amounts of resources to flat out break the economy and trades in any given server that this game is going to rely on. And yeah, I just glossed over it, but no server lists, no control of where and who you connect with outside of a 4-player invite party. That's it. It's shit. And there is no private servers to control who you play with and when either. I mean, sure, Todd has said that private servers will come, quote-unquote, sometime in the future, but that vague shadow of a promise is meaningless, useless, unless and until that actually happens. He can say it now to try and shut people up, doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. What we do know is there's no such thing as a private server at launch, and we can't count on it being a thing, which means by default we have no control about who we're going to be playing with when we load up the game. And in my humble opinion, if you're doing an online-only PvP game, I want some control over that, so I can at least attempt to shield myself from hackers, cheaters, griefers, just shitty people in general. All that said, the positive. It's still a Fallout game. It still takes place in the universe they've spent years and years world-building with lore and stories and its own unique aesthetic and twists on humanity, the socio-political metaphors and commentary. And using this world as a palette for an online survival game, which I'm hoping for a cooperative experience in, is interesting to me. Fascinating, in fact. I lament what we will be missing when compared to my Fallout 4 experience, and I'm anxious about my experience being negatively interfered with by random assholes who happen to land on the same servers I'm playing on, and who spend their time just trying to make someone else's day worse. But with a huge new map to explore, new rad critters to freak out about, hopefully some interesting quests to go on, new lore to explore and unravel, which without NPCs will sadly probably mostly be told through audio tapes and computer logs and emails and such. And while they were also common in Fallout 4, they weren't the only way to get plenty of NPCs to interact with. And while I spent my time in Fallout 4 avoiding setting up a significant home base, Fallout 76, not having the populated cities and areas of Fallout 4, it would seem to be more strongly guiding me towards scratch building my own home base and headquarters. And that could be fun, if they fix the clumsy build mechanics from Fallout 4. I think it could be a fun experience if executed extremely careful, even for players like me with a stronger preference for single-player experiences in these kind of RPGs. In fact, I have pre-ordered to buy access to the beta, and I will be getting in as much beta playtime as I possibly can to try and figure out if this game works in a way that slides up against how I want it to work and how I want to play it. If not, I guess I can always cancel the pre-order. And if it is a pleasant surprise and I wind up really enjoying the beta, well, hopefully it won't be too long before those supposed private servers arrive for us, as I think I'd rather enjoy streaming a co-op game filled with my Twitch subscriber peeps or something like that. We'll see. And with the game using a modified and rebuilt engine from Fallout 4 and sharing many basic assets as such, hopefully that means the majority of the dev efforts went into making it a solid gameplay experience. Because there'll be a lot in this game they just didn't have to build from the ground up. I mean, it's Bethesda, so it will be unstable and it will be buggy no matter what they do, because Bethesda. But still, I think for now, the core Fallout community should take a step back and wait it out. There's a lot of very angry people screaming at each other right now, and at Bethesda, and much like the reaction to Pokemon Let's Go, which similarly triggered a very loud and flailing community reaction because it changes some pretty precious core mechanics and gameplay that we're used to for previous entries in that series, it's all kind of pointless at this point to scream and flail and wail. At this point, you can just kind of rest easy knowing that the publishers have heard you. There's no point in making either community a hostile, screeching, toxic place from here until the games actually launch. It's time to be calm, think, anticipate, have proper grown-up conversations, and then judge based on the real gameplay experiences we get to actually play ourselves. We are getting a beta for Fallout 76, and if you decide it's not for you, you've got that cancel option under your belt for the pre-order. And if it's not for you, that'll be disappointing, I'm sure, but here's the secret to being a happy gamer. Not every game is a game you will like, and that's okay. Not every game is designed around your personal preference for gameplay experiences, and that's okay too. And some people like things that you don't like, and that's okay too. Screaming angrily at people who share a common interest in a game franchise as you do is good for nobody. It just makes everybody look like a tool. So take a sip of nice cool Nuka-Cola and let's see what happens when Bethesda tries to make Fallout an online survival experience. It might suck. It might be rad. See what I did there? Rad. We'll find out soon enough. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.